Imagine picking up an Egyptian stone jar crafted over 5,000 years ago and finding it as perfectly cylindrical as something made on a modern machine. Vessels, jars, bowls, everyday containers from pre-dynastic Egypt, even before the age of the pharaohs, display an unexplained level of precision. Why are they so perfectly shaped? Who made them? And how on earth did they do it? I have spent my last year trying to answer these questions by 3D scanning and analyzing these special objects around the world using cutting-edge technology. My colleagues and I at the Artifact Research Foundation have worked with 4 museum collections, including over 100 objects so far. In this episode, I will take you on a journey and show you what we have found in the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology that will change history. Just a quick reminder, more than 80% of my viewers are not subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy this content and want to stay updated on our latest research, please hit that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you. My friend Adam Young began collecting these ancient vessels with his wife Emily over 10 years ago. He was told that these artifacts are special for a reason, and at that time no one had metrologically analyzed them with precise measurements. Adam decided to scan the first one he acquired, and he actually hit the jackpot. The data revealed astonishing precision. This was the so-called original gangster vase, showing around 15 micron deviation in median circularity. Scanning technology back in 2017 was quite limited, and a portable 3D scanner with micron-level accuracy didn't really exist yet. So Adam used a structured light scanner for that first scan. I started watching Ben van Kerkwijk's YouTube videos around 2022 on the Uncharted X YouTube channel about these objects, and my attention was immediately drawn in. I thought if these objects are truly as precise as people say, this could be a smoking gun evidence of some kind of lost technology. I also watched the mainstream debunking videos. The major counter-argument was the provenance of these vases. Basically, skeptics suggest they might be modern fakes. If they were fakes made with modern tools, that would explain the tight tolerances and then nothing to see here. I suspected no one had really tried to research any museum vases with documented provenance. So I had the idea to ask as many museums as possible for access to their Hearthstone vase collections. I crafted a polite email detailing my project, promising to bring all my own equipment at my expense. All the museum needed to do was provide the objects and a small space for my setup. To my surprise, I was quite successful. Right off the bat, 2 museums responded positively. The first was the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology in London, and the other was the Museo Egizio in Turin, Italy. The second largest Egyptian museum in the world after Cairo. The Petrie Museum granted me 2 research appointments, and the Italian museum asked for a more detailed research plan. Meanwhile, Uncharted X organized a tour to Egypt that I attended in March 2024. I was lucky that Adam Young was also on that tour. We immediately connected when I told him I had the research session lined up at the Petrie Museum. We started assembling a team of interested people who could help with the project. The plan was to focus on 3D scanning at first, but Kyle Allen, another host of that tour, suggested we also set up a basic photogrammetry with rotary table and endoscope camera, so we could capture the inside of the vases and look for tool marks. I also met Chris King on that tour. Chris is the founder of Chris King Precision Components, a precision manufacturing expert who has worked with tolerances required for aerospace and medical industries. He knows machining inside and out. If you follow my podcast, you might know Chris. We have had and will continue to have some really interesting discussions about possible machining marks and other clues on ancient sites. We also decided to include some good old-fashioned visual inspections using precision calipers to manually measure wall thickness variations wherever possible, because every bit of data helps. Today there are roughly 4 types of 3D scanning technologies available, each with pros and cons. Photogrammetry uses hundreds of photos stitched together by special software via pixel tracking. The software calculates the spatial position of each image and reconstructs a 3D model. Photogrammetry requires good lighting conditions and high-resolution DSLR cameras for sharp images. It reconstructs both the object's geometry and its surface texture. Accuracy is heavily dependent on the camera network setup and processing, but in practice it's limited to around 50 to 100 microns at best. Structured light scanning is a technology that projects known light patterns onto the object's surface and calculates the geometry based on how the pattern is deformed. It's currently the most accurate optical scanning method I know of, with a precision limit around 5 to 10 microns. The downside is that structured light rigs are often bulky and sensitive to movement and lighting, which makes them harder to use in cramped museum environments. CT scanning as a technology offers the highest accuracy available, on the order of 1 micron or even better. A CT scan can capture incredible detail by imaging the object in slices using X-rays. However, you need a controlled lab environment and a safe way to handle the radiation. You can't exactly log a CT scanner into a museum gallery. CT scanning has been done on some privately owned vases where the owner can take the artifact to a scanning facility, but for museum pieces this just wasn't an option. Honestly, even though CT would have been amazing, I'm sure if I had proposed bringing ancient artifacts to a CT lab, the museum would have said no way. Laser scanning is a technology we ultimately chose. It's very portable, reasonably accurate around 10 to 30 microns, and quite versatile for capturing 3D objects. A laser scanner works by projecting laser lines onto the surface and calculating geometry from the reflection using the angle of return. Our device has different modes for faster capture or for better penetration into deep holes and undercuts. I'm extremely grateful to Shining 3D for lending me their FreeScan Combo Plus scanner for this research. Its accuracy is rated to about 20 microns, making it the most accurate handheld scanner available in 2025. Yes, a top-of-the-line structured light scanner could achieve finer accuracy, but those are difficult to travel with and usually require a dedicated lab space to operate. Most museums don't have the room or flexibility for that kind of setup. The FreeScan Combo Plus was handheld and mobile, which also made it better for some of our larger targets like scanning big granite boxes, but that's another story. We also plan to do additional measurements alongside the 3D scans, so the laser scanner's portability made it the best overall choice in my opinion. Another huge advantage of a handheld laser scanner is that it can capture hard-to-reach details and undercuts like areas under the lip or handles of the vase. With a stationary or a tripod-based system, it's tricky to get those angles, but with a handheld device you can maneuver around and even inside the object to an extent. Before we dive into our comparison of scanning technologies, let's pause to define 3 cornerstone methodology terms: accuracy, precision, and resolution. Accuracy is all about truth. It measures how close each point on our digital model is to the real object surface. Think of it as your scanner's bullseye performance after calibration. A ±20 micron accuracy spec means each point sits within 20 micron of its true location. Precision, on the other hand, is consistency. If you scan the same vase 5 times in a row, do the points cluster tightly or scatter all over? High precision means low random variability. Your repeated scans look almost identical, even if they are slightly off from the true geometry. Finally, resolution describes detail. It's the smallest feature your scanner can distinguish, often defined by the spacing of points on a flat surface or the finest stripe or fringe pattern you can project. While a 0.1 mm point spacing captures very fine curves, it doesn't guarantee accuracy unless your optics and calibration are up to the task. So high accuracy with high resolution captures every fine detail and places it exactly where it belongs. High accuracy with low resolution retains correct overall geometry but simplifies or omits small features. Low accuracy with high resolution shows dense detail that's nonetheless systematically offset or warped from the true shape. In 3D scanning, you need both sides of the coin: resolution to capture the smallest features and accuracy to place them exactly where they belong. Only when you achieve that balance can you truly rely on your virtual twin as a faithful representation of the real world. We tested these different scanning technologies on the same original vase. The one first became famous via Uncharted X, they call it the OG vase. Over 10 years, this single vase has been scanned multiple times with different methods. In 2017, we captured this vase with a high-resolution structured light scanner. Even then, the profile was remarkably round. Our analysis showed a median circularity root mean square deviation of 37 microns, hinting at the part's exceptional precision. Fast forward to 2022, we rescanned the vase on an industrial computed tomography or CT system, widely regarded as the gold standard for dimensional accuracy. The CT data not only confirmed the structured light results, but tightened them further. The median circularity deviation fell to 16 microns, effectively defining our ground truths. CT also captured the full interior of the OG vase, revealing a median circularity deviation of 29 microns. Then in early 2025, we built a bespoke photogrammetry rig using a professional DSLR camera, carefully arranged studio lighting, and using the Agisoft Metashape software. That setup delivered performance on par with the structured light scan, median circularity deviation of 36 microns, and produced a nicely textured 3D model. Finally, we evaluated the vase with our FreeScan combo laser scanner, specified at 20 micron accuracy. Against the CT ground truths, the laser data showed a median circularity deviation of 39 microns. As a rough consistency check, subtracting the scanner's 20 micron accuracy spec from the 39 microns result leaves roughly 19 microns, which is on the same order as the CT's 16 micron root mean square, suggesting the FreeScan's noise contribution is consistent with its spec and reinforcing our confidence in its real-world performance. By contrast, the industrial CT data are constructed voxel by voxel at roughly 10 to 20 microns, helping drive the circularity deviation down to 16 microns. For purely optical methods on a smooth vase, we are fundamentally limited by optics, sensor pixels, and surface scattering, and that's why the laser scan, the DSLR-based photogrammetry, and the ATOS all land in the same 37 to 39 micron median circularity range. These absolute measurements are fascinating on their own, but for us the most important thing was the relative comparison. We wanted to capture lots of objects using the same method and measure them with the same software pipeline. That way we can directly compare the manufacturing quality of many different vases as apples to apples and maybe draw some conclusions about the lost technology question. Consistency is key, so we committed to using one scanning approach, laser scanning in this case, and one standardized analysis method for all the artifacts going forward. Fast forward to October. The Egypt trip was in March and time flew by. I won't lie, it was incredibly exciting to reunite with everyone in London for the Petrie Museum project. 3 of my wonderful patrons, Chuck, Sarah and Vasana, also came along. I could only officially bring a limited number of people into the museum's research room, but a few others joined us in London for the fun. We had 2 appointment days at the museum, spaced 1 week apart, which gave us some downtime in between for regular museum visits and of course a few creamy pints of Guinness to celebrate. The night before our first research appointment, we did a practice run at the Airbnb. I found a marble toothbrush holder at the place we were staying. It was roughly vase-shaped, and we used it to practice our scanning workflow. We even rehearsed using the calipers and the endoscope camera just to get our coordination and ROAS figured out. We wanted the fastest, smoothest process once we were in the museum with real artifacts, so troubleshooting on a random marble cup the night before was pretty useful and kind of fun. That first appointment day, I think we were all a bit nervous and very excited. We realized we were the first group in history to analyze these ancient vases with advanced 3D tech in a museum setup. And what better place to start than the Petrie Museum? After all, Sir William Flinders Petrie himself was the first engineer and archaeologist back in the 19th century to investigate these objects in a systematic way. Petrie took meticulous measurements with the tools of his time, but of course he didn't have the kind of sophisticated geometry analysis we have now in 2025. So it felt like we were continuing Petrie's work, picking up where he left off, but with the state-of-the-art tools. Our quest to validate and expound upon his ideas kicked off on Monday morning in October as we piled into an Uber headed to the Petrie Museum. Our appointment started at 10:30 and we arrived just in time, buzzing with anticipation. It was me, Adam and Kyle hauling in all the equipment. Initially, the museum only allowed 2 people in the room for space and safety reasons, but they were kind enough to let all of us in once they saw we were careful and organized. Quick aside about the Petrie Museum. It's an amazing place, absolutely packed with artifacts. It holds over 80,000 objects, making it one of the largest collections of Egyptian and Sudanese material in the world. Fun fact, in 1913, Petrie sold his personal collection of antiquities to University College London, which formed the core of this museum. It opened to the public in 1915. So you can imagine, we were basically in an Indiana Jones warehouse of ancient pieces. The museum staff set us up with a nice big table as our workspace. I immediately started unpacking and warming up the scanner. It's recommended to calibrate the scanner whenever the environment changes, especially lighting and temperature, so I did a full calibration each morning before we began scanning. We divided up tasks among the team. Kyle was in charge of the photogrammetry setup, taking a series of photos of each object on a rotary turntable and also using the endoscope camera to peek inside the vessels for any tool marks or internal features. We learned a lot on the fly about what camera settings to use, how to position lights, etc. But since then, we have actually built a much more sophisticated photogrammetry rig with a custom light box and an automated turntable. Chris inspected the vessels one by one. Under direct lighting, he examined each with his loupe to check for tool marks and other imperfections, and wherever the precision caliper could fit in, he measured the wall thickness at several heights. Adam and I focused on the laser scans. While I was doing the scanning sweeps, Adam organized the file folders, labeled each scan, took notes, and kept everything documented and in order. Good data management is super important when you are capturing so many pieces. You don't want to mix anything up. Lisa Rondisi from the museum staff was assigned to supervise us the whole time, which is totally understandable since these objects are priceless and fragile. I mean, not the Hearthstone vases, but the rest. They watched intently as we worked, making sure we weren't doing anything risky. They even shared some horror stories of past visitors. Apparently, someone once broke a pottery vessel during research, and another time someone wrapped Petrie's core number 7 with waxed floss, which was not a good idea. After a few hours, once the staff saw how careful and professional we were, they relaxed and became almost as interested in the process as we were. The museum team had brought out all the objects we had pre-selected in advance. We were allowed up to 10 objects per appointment. If we decided not to scan something, for example, if an item turned out to be too damaged or fragile, they were happy to swap in another piece from our wish list. In total, over the 2 sessions, we examined 26 objects. While our focus was on the hardstone vessels, the ones suspected of extreme precision, we also intentionally included a few alabaster and pottery vessels as control samples or points of comparison. Most of the hardstone pieces were attributed to the pre-dynastic Nagada culture, and they varied in material like basalt, porphyry, diorite, limestone, breccia. We also grabbed a couple of non-regular shaped vases, like one shoulder jar and another very tall, oddly shaped one, just to broaden the dataset. The sizes ranged from as small as 4 cm tall up to about 20 cm for the largest vase. Knowing that we wouldn't be dealing only with nice stable flat bottom vases because some have rounded bases or angled bottoms, I came prepared with a special custom stand I designed. This stand could hold the vase by its rounded lower part and elevate it, allowing me to scan underneath any lock handles or rims. The stand was decorated with tracking markers so the scanner could keep its orientation. Without this accessory, it would have been really difficult to capture almost the entire 3D surface of certain vases in one go. Why was it so important to scan most of the object in one go? Because if we had to scan a vase in several separate sessions, for example, flip it over to get a certain part I could not reach from above, and later merge those scans, we would have to align those 2 or more scans together in software. And anytime you align multiple scans, you introduce some unknown error. For our purposes, measuring circularity at the micron level, even a tiny alignment error could throw off the results. So I prefer not to measure ultra-precise circularity on an object that was stitched together from multiple scans, since I can't be 100% sure of the alignment accuracy. The stand helped us avoid that. Now, stitching multiple scans is still perfectly fine for many other measurements. For example, if we wanted to measure the parallelism between the vase's top and bottom surfaces, or the perpendicularity of its mouth bore relative to the top surface, a small alignment error wouldn't really impact those as much. Those are interesting metrics too, and I do plan to cover things like that in another episode. But for now, we are focused on gathering the best data for circularity. During the Petrie sessions, we also took the opportunity to scan a few ancient drill cores, including the famous Petrie core number 7 I just mentioned, using both photogrammetry and laser scanning. We applied different scanning techniques on the drill cores, and the results turned out to be a bit ambiguous. There is a lot to analyze there, so I'm going to unpack those in a separate video. Stay tuned for that if you are interested in the ancient drill marks.
How do you feel?
Stressed, hands are still a little bit shaking, but we did it. Hopefully the program was not crashing. And now we are having a lunch break, and then we go back for the rest. We have, actually the time was flying. We did like half of them scanned and also recorded with the endoscope, I think. Right?
Yeah.
50% is kind of done, but the core is done. That was... Actually we squeezed it into the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, the finale.
It was a bit sporty. But I'm glad, I'm happy, I think it will be fine.
Awesome.
By the time of our second appointment, we even had Johanna James join the team. All these measurements and tasks really benefited from extra helping hands, and Johanna helped document the process and added some good energy to our little crew.
When we put it on the camera with the lights on, it became so shiny. It doesn't look as shiny now, but when you put light on, it's like boom.
After our successful scanning sessions, everyone headed home and I got to work on the mountain of data. We had huge amount of raw scan data and hundreds of photos, not to mention all the video footage we recorded for the documentary side of things. A lot of people assume that once we finished scanning, we could just release the results immediately. In reality, scanning was the easy part. The real work was just beginning after that. So the biggest chunk of effort would go into software development, data processing, and making sure everything was prepared correctly for analysis. The first thing we needed was software that could handle our scans and let us measure things like circularity and concentricity precisely. I tried a couple of industrial-grade metrology and its inspection programs like EX-Model, Polyworks, and Zeiss GOM Inspect. EX-Model and Polyworks are fantastic but extremely expensive. Zeiss Inspect software luckily offers a free version with a lot of functionality, so I ended up choosing that as the basis for our investigation. We even had several meetings with Exact Metrology to figure out the best way to align these 3D models for measurement. Unfortunately, the conclusion was a bit disappointing, since there was no straightforward built-in solution to align these unusual shapes perfectly. Here is the issue. Before you can measure anything on a 3D scan, you have to perform an alignment. Basically, orient the digital model correctly in the coordinate system, centered and upright. The typical method in metrology software is to fit simple geometric primitives like a plane, sphere, cylinder, or cone to features of your object and use those as references for alignment. For example, you might fit a plane to a flat base to define horizontal, or fit a cylinder to a known round bore to define an axis. But with these ancient vases, that's problematic. Most of them don't have any truly flat surfaces or enough cylindrical or spherical surface to use. Their shapes are kind of like elongated ellipsoids or asymmetric ovoids. In short, no easy geometric references. In the very early days of the vase scanning project, several people were working in the background on the alignment and the measurements, and there was no standardized way of measuring the different vessels. When I see someone reporting about the vases and their geometry online, I'm always questioning how those objects were exactly aligned and measured. Can I trust in the people's work who made those analyses? Did anyone else see or double-check their result or their work? I don't think anyone in this community would falsify results, but my biggest concern was a superficial, non-documented software or analysis which no one else saw but the developer. To my knowledge, we are not the only people who are analyzing these objects today, since several 3D scans were released to the public, although we are the only ones who have properly scanned full objects from museums with the right provenance so far, and working together with several museums around the world. So I spent about 6 weeks developing a custom software package, one that could align and analyze these vase scans in a repeatable way. I named it Petriscope after Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie, a pioneer in the field of archaeology and scientific methodology. Without his early work measuring these artifacts, we might not even know to look for these objects today. I didn't do this alone either. Petriscope has been vetted by 3 professionals who graciously lend their expertise to make sure the methods are solid. Professor Marianne Marcis, PhD, photogrammetrist, cultural heritage digitalization specialist, expert in 3D reconstruction, surveying and documentation. Johannes Bjorn Meyer, PhD, mathematician and medical research engineer specialized in hyperbolic geometry and signal processing. Márton Szemenyei, PhD, computer vision and deep learning researcher, uses AI for 3D and robotic perception. Their input was invaluable in crafting a reliable process. Since our analysis is comparative, we are comparing one vase to another, it's critical to use the same method for every object and document exactly what that method is. After developing Petriscope, here is the basic process each scanned model goes through. Cleaning. The first step after scanning an object is organizing the raw data and cleaning up any obvious noise. Noise in this context means stray scan points or blobs that aren't part of the object, floating bits captured from the turntable, the stand, or just random scanning artifacts. Every measurement has some noise. Think of grain in a photo or static in audio. The key in maintaining a high signal-to-noise ratio. Our scanner, the FreeScan Combo Plus, isn't perfect, but it did an amazing job considering the variety of materials, surface finishes and textures we encountered. We might be dealing with tens of millions of points for a single vase, so cleaning saves computing power later and ensures we are analyzing the object surface, not some random blip. Keep in mind we are working with 5,000-year-old artifacts using bleeding-edge modern tech and processing huge datasets. We are literally pushing the limits of consumer-grade computing here. This is a perfect time for a shameless plug. If any potential sponsors out there would like to support our work with a custom-built, small form factor portable computer that can crunch unbelievable amount of data, send me an email at karoy@artifactfoundation.org. Segmentation. Once the scan is cleaned, we export it as an STL mesh and bring it into PetrieScope. Before we attempt any precise alignment, it's best to segment the mesh into relevant parts so that we only use undamaged geometry to estimate the vase's true rotational axis. A quick pre-alignment is done using Principal Component Analysis, or PCA, which analyzes all the points in the mesh to find the object's main orientation. For most vases, PCA alone is enough to get things roughly upright for segmentation. From there, we run an automatic segmentation algorithm I developed. It only needs two inputs, the top and bottom vertices on the vase, and it generates the required vertex groups. This step lets us isolate intact sections while ignoring chips or missing pieces. Lock handles are still segmented manually because they are not yet part of the automated workflow, since handles are usually asymmetrical and offset from the vase's rotational axis. Including them in the alignment calculations would distort the results. By excluding them, we ensure the axis estimation relies solely on the interior and exterior wall surfaces, so the most relevant geometry for circularity analysis. Alignment. When we import the raw scan, the vase is initially at some random orientation, not lined up with any axis. We need to set it straight relative to the global z-axis. Imagine aligning the vase so it stands perfectly upright in the software just as it would in real life. The core of the alignment process in PetrieScope uses two algorithms. One algorithm takes the vase and virtually slices it into many thin horizontal sections. For each slice, it fits a best fit circle to the cross-section outline. Then it connects the centers of all those circles, effectively tracing the object's central axis from bottom to top. That estimated axis is then aligned to the global z-axis. This method is iterative and will adjust the model orientation until those fitted circle centers form as upright line as possible. The other approach doesn't slice at all. Instead, it uses the entire surface mesh and analyzes the vertices to directly estimate the symmetry axis of the object. It's a more complex optimization method, finding the single line that best represents the vase's symmetry. We have both alignment engines working and tested. I will save the detailed math and algorithm explanation for a future episode because there's a lot to unpack there. The takeaway is we can now reliably align even these tricky ellipsoidish vases accurately and repeatably. Furthermore, we can also align fractions of a vase or pot shards. Analysis. Once a vase is aligned properly, running the geometric measurements is straightforward. We mainly focus on circularity, aka how perfectly round each cross-section is, and concentricity, which means how well centered the cross-section centers are vertically. For circularity, the software slices the aligned vase into many thin horizontal sections automatically, almost like a CAT scan, but with our mesh. For each slice, it fits a perfect circle to the outline of that cross-section. Then it calculates a value called root mean square deviation for that slice. In simple terms, root mean square deviation is like an average error. It measures how far the actual points of the cross-section deviate from the perfect circle fit. Each slice gets its own RMSD or root mean square deviation value, telling us the out of roundness at that height of the vase. Now, a single number for one slice is interesting, but we have potentially hundreds of slices per object. We needed a single overall metric to compare vases. You might think to just take the average of all the slice root mean square deviations, but that can be misleading if there is an outlier. For example, if part of the vase is damaged or there was scanning noise, that slice high error could skew the average. Instead, we use the median root mean square deviation as our representative circularity metric for the vase. The median is the middle value when you sort all the slice deviations from smallest to largest. The median is such more robust against outliers, and badly damaged sections won't ruin the overall assessment. In several of these ancient vases, there are chips or missing pieces, so median tells the story better than mean or subjectively filtering out slices. For those who are curious, standard geometric dimensioning and tolerancing practice, or so-called GD&T, often uses a peak-to-trough measurement for roundness, basically the difference between the maximum and minimum radius in a cross-section. We found that approach to be not very practical here for some outlier sensitivity reasons. However, we do present something similar visually. Alongside the numerical analysis, I visualized vase roundness by lofting fitted circles from each slice into an idealized CAD model, a perfect reference. In inspection software, overlaying the original scan on this model generates color-coded 3D heat maps that reveal true surface deviations, literally highs and lows. This offers a full peak-to-trough 3D view rather than a flat 2D error plot. Industrial inspection normally compares parts to the original CAD drawings. Since we lack 5,000-year-old designs, we use the vase's best fit geometric shape as our design intent, highlighting tool marks and asymmetries directly on the artifact. So I guess half of the people have already skipped to ahead to see the results graphics anyway. For those of you who stuck around through the nerdy part, thank you. Now let's get to the fun part. Before we jump straight into the results, it's useful to have a baseline. We scanned a few reference objects like alabaster and pottery vessels, which were made with different techniques and even some modern samples. I want to briefly show what their circularity and concentricity look like so you have context. These are objects we expect to have lower precision. By comparing the stone vases to these, it becomes very clear just how unusual these vases are. Knowing what modern processes can do help frame the ancient numbers. Hand-carved stone has a very wide range, roughly 10 mm to 0.2 mm for circularity and concentricity depending on skill, stone, and whether simple gauges fixtures are used. Conventional turning and CNC machines have typical production tolerances of roundness or runout around from 130 microns down to 20 microns without special procedures. High-end lathes, fixturing, and process control can push below this on metals. Aerospace and precision grinding or lapping is ranging from 20 microns to 1 micron and submicron in specialized cases on suitable materials with tight environmental control. This is not directly comparable to freehand stonework, but it shows what rotary methods plus fixturing can achieve. We wanted an alabaster reference with firm provenance. Many had uncertain records, but this piece was found in a lower chamber of the tomb of the governor Mayat Kau, dated to the 18th dynasty. The base is clearly irregular and typical of hand-shaped calcite alabaster work, a longer-tested craft well before the Old Kingdom. The external median circularity is 518 microns, and the median concentricity is 1.25 mm. I could also capture some of the interior at the mouse showing 342 microns median circularity and 1.54 mm median concentricity. One alabaster sample is not definitive, but it shows how high the numbers can be on relatively soft stone even this late in time. We measured further alabaster elsewhere, more on that soon. If we summarize with the geometric mean, which is our combined score, this vase gives 806 microns, that's comfortably within the handmade range we discussed earlier. To compare with the hard stone group, we also scanned pottery and alabaster from similar eras. This large Nagada jar, dated to around between 3500 and 3200 BC, has 4 lugs and the characteristic painted decoration. The external median circularity is 733 microns and the median concentricity is 629 microns. These values point to fully handmade construction rather than a precisely centered spindle. Several techniques fit, including the coiling method used in pre-dynastic times, which doesn't require a potter's wheel to produce rounded forms. This pottery vessel is a little better than the alabaster above, but the combined metric is still 679 microns, clearly in the handmade envelope. In our last trip to Egypt, Youssef Avian lent us 3 hard stone vases that his stonemason brother Jacob Avian had made using modern hand-guided power tools such as an angle grinder. In order, the last precise is the red conglomerate, 329 microns median circularity and 661 microns median concentricity. The combined metric of this vase is 466 microns, and it's owned by Ben at Uncharted X currently. The second is a little bit better, made of rose granite, 240 microns circularity and 767 microns concentricity, and the combined metrics is 429 microns. And the best one is made of diorite gneiss, 283 microns in circularity and 403 microns concentricity, and the combined metrics is 338 microns. Adam commissioned a multi-generational stone carving shop in China to replicate one of the scan vases. They used modern machinery and polished the exterior with hand-guided tools. The interior wasn't fully hollowed, they drilled a straight bore instead. The exterior shows 108 microns median circularity and 198 microns median concentricity. On the interior we measured 81 microns circularity and 944 microns concentricity. The scan was captured with a high-performance photogrammetry setup. Using the more precise exterior values, the combined precision score is 146 microns, a clear rotary signature on roundness with less controlled centering. Scientists against myths produced a hard stone vessel over 2 years with rudimentary tools, checking roundness on a modern potter's wheel with metal ball bearings. In my opinion, it's cheating. They compared it to museum pieces measured with manual calipers, not scans, so the external comparisons are hard to evaluate. They open sourced a 3D model. Its mesh density is much lower than ours, but it's useful as a reference. From their model, we obtained 118 microns external median circularity and 77 microns median concentricity for a combined 95 microns. That is an excellent result for handwork aided by a precision wheel, and importantly, several museum vases still come in lower. The toothbrush holder was scanned in a London Airbnb, a mass-produced marble piece probably, turned out to be quite precise as expected for late turn work. External circularity is 52 microns and external concentricity is 90 microns. I also captured most of the interior with 45 microns internal circularity and 223 microns internal concentricity. For consistency, we used the most precise surface, which was the external surface in this case, which gave us a combined 68 micron score. The OG vase also belongs in the reference list because it set the benchmark early on. The external surface has 16 microns circularity and 46 microns concentricity. The internal surface has 29 microns circularity and 49 microns concentricity. The external combined score is 27 microns, which anchors the lower left corner of our plots and validates the measurement pipeline. We processed and analyzed 21 Petrie objects with the same scan and processing pipeline, so the numbers are apple to apples. The first group set above combined score of 200 microns, which means they are in the typical handmade envelope. The best piece in this band reached around 208 microns, where the interior was more precise than the exterior. This group includes bezel jars and bowls alongside more regular vase forms. The middle group falls between hand-carved and conventional turning or CNC tolerances, roughly between 140 to 200 microns combined. A bezeled vase at 143 microns is a good example here, and there is also a remarkable rounded bottom bowl in this range. Finally, the top group contains the most precise, exceptional pieces where several pre-dynastic hardstone vessels rival or surpass our modern references. This piece isn't hardstone, yet it still ranks among the most precise. It's limestone, small but elegant, from the Nagada culture, dated between 3500 and 3200 BC, with a recorded find spot in Nagada tomb 743. The form echoes hardstone barrel vases. The external median circularity is 165 microns and the median concentricity is 116 microns, giving an overall combined score of 138 microns. For a soft stone, that's impressively tight and a helpful counterpoint to the hardstone results. A slender diorite cylinder jar attributed to the 6th dynasty. Despite the large chip on the base and the missing part of the rim, it's one of the most interesting pieces. Very smooth surfaces with sharply flared base and shoulders. The interior is much more circular than the exterior, 141 microns outside versus 26 microns circularity inside, while the axis is offset showed by the interior concentricity of 633 microns and the exterior concentricity of 490 microns. The interior surface is the most perfectly round single surface we recorded at Petrie. Using the interior values, the combined score is 128 microns, a classic, very round but off-center signature. One of several bezeled vases from Nagada II, at roughly 6.1 cm tall, its function is unclear, but the precision is notable. This example measures 111 microns circularity and 55 microns concentricity. It takes 3rd place overall with a combined metric of 78 microns. 2nd place goes to this small white veined grey limestone barrel vase from the pre-dynastic Nagada II culture. The rim is chipped and it has 2 cylindrical lugs. It appears to show an ancient repair along the veining. Chris King discovered small bubbles in the vein and the museum had no record of repair regarding this object. The median circularity is 96 microns and the concentricity is 58 microns, yielding 74 microns combined, remarkably good even for limestone. This diorite vase is 4.1 cm tall and possibly from Nagada II, from around 3500 to 3200 BC. Dating is recorded as quote-unquote possible Nagada II, which is common for lots of ancient vases, but the metrology is clear. The rim area is broken away. It posted our lowest external median circularity at 72 microns, with 54 microns concentricity. This little guy is the best at P3 with a combined score of 62 microns. The render below shows deviation for the 3 debated objects: the OG vase, the most precise piece from the Petrie Museum, and the Scientist against Myth vase. The scale is fixed at plus and minus 100 microns, and it's clearly visible that the vase on the left isn't even close to the other 2. The small middle piece still doesn't reach the OG vase's precision, but honestly, I didn't expect to find even this precision amongst the museum pieces. It's also interesting that even between the OG vase's handles, the surface remains very precise. If we plot each object on the circularity concentricity scatter, the pre-dynastic pieces cluster among the best performers and, in several cases, rival or beat our modern references. The dynastic pieces are much more dispersed. Note that our modern controls include a granite replica and the mass-produced marble item. Even with those advantages, some pre-dynastic hardstone vessels still occupy the lower left region. The Scientists Against Myths project is an impressive effort, but their model's combined figure is not lower than several museum vases in the study, which comes in below 95 microns. Part of the discrepancy likely reflects their calipers versus our scan-based metrology. They have also cheated, in my opinion, when they used modern metal ball bearing equipped potter's wheel to find and remove the high points of the exterior. Jacob Avian's hand-guided pieces are strong examples of modern freehand work, yet the best pre-dynastic vases surpass them on the same metrics. It's consistent with tighter rotary control and better fixturing on the ancient pieces. Within the dynastic set, precision varies widely. Some high-quality examples may reflect earlier traditions or curated heirlooms. In any case, vessels with their very tight tolerances become even rarer after the Old Kingdom. Finally, the precision versus Mohs hardness plot shows no penalty for hard stones. Diorite and basalt, between 6 and 6.5, still achieve excellent circularity and concentricity. That aligns with the controlled rotary shaping or boring, not simple hand grinding, very much in line with the observations made by the English Egyptologist Walter B. Emery, who noted the exceptional workmanship of the earliest stone vessels in the 60s. Unfortunately, we have no really satisfactory evidence of the method of manufacture of these stone vessels, and although certain processes of the work are known to us, others remain a complete mystery. How did they achieve such accuracy that when we swing a shallow bowl or dish, no deviation from a perfect circle can be noted? How did they cut rock crystal tubular jars with walls not more than a millimeter thick? Although we have no evidence, it would appear almost certain that the craftsman had some method of rotating the material against the fixed tool, for it would be impossible to obtain such accuracy purely by hand chiseling and grinding by measurements, no matter how numerous or how painstakingly done. This was just the first episode of our pre-dynastic vase analysis series. There is so much more to come. I'm also processing all the museum data we have collected so far, and at this point we have scans of nearly 100 vases from museum collections all around the world, so please bear with me. There is a mountain of analysis to get through, but it's coming. Each dataset brings us closer to understanding the capabilities of techniques of ancient artisans. Were they using some form of lathes, advanced drilling machines, techniques lost to time? We are gathering the hard evidence needed to answer those questions piece by piece. Special thanks to Shining 3D for lending us the FreeScan Combo Plus scanner and to their engineers for training us on the device. Without this collaboration, we could never have acquired such a huge high-quality dataset. We hope to continue working with them and maybe test their new devices in the next projects. Special thanks to Lisa Randisi at the Petrie Museum for her tremendous help. She was extremely kind and accommodating during both of our research appointments, and she went above and beyond what we initially agreed on. We truly appreciate her enthusiasm and assistance. It made a big difference. And of course, special thanks to my incredible supporters who made this whole journey possible and continue to support my research. Thanks to your generosity, I can travel, access these artifacts, and invest in new gear to bring you better content and deeper analysis. I have so much more I would love to share, but I will save it for the next videos. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ancient Technology Podcast. If you did, please like and share and subscribe. I will see you in the next episode. Cheers.